Welcome, friends. I'm working here on a smaller MDF board. This is a 13 by 18, and I've got it kind of primed and ready to go. Adding here just a simple sky and creating a little bit of some clouds here, mixed together some purple and burnt umber, and slowly changing the value of that, and also just mixed here this nice gold color. I wanted to have a bit of a complement to the darker purple in this cloud. Kind of wanted to have a bit of an effect where we're kind of moving into the later hours of the day and the sun's beginning to set, and just have kind of some nice effects here, bringing in a little bit of Indian yellow, and just going to be jumping around with a few different colors here. We've got here an ultramarine light blue color as well, and then I've changed my brush here to just a small number 0 brush, and try to get some nice detail, create a little bit of a silver lining. And what I thought I'd be working on here, what I've been thinking about for a while, is I wanted to paint the Great Wall of China. And so as I've been kind of contemplating this painting, and I took a little bit of time to really think about what I wanted here, what kind of mood I wanted, and what kind of composition here. Really just kind of wanted to create kind of an interesting sky here that we can create kind of a fun, colorful, neat little mood. So really just wanted to keep kind of working on this. I'm using all acrylic right now, kind of underpainting everything in acrylic. At the end of the painting, I'll be switching to my oil palette. So kind of just trying to lighten up my silver lining a little bit more here. Wanted it to be a little bit bolder, but also still try to keep it fairly soft. I've gone in already here, and I've kind of traced in just a simple outline. This is really for me more of a guide here on where I want everything to kind of live. We're gonna have some nice distant mountains here in the back, and so wanted to keep this really give it that illusion of distance. So I'm really still staying into my blue-gray tones, adding a little bit of dioxazine purple as well to my blue-gray mixture. And what I've mixed here is ultramarine blue and burnt umber, a little bit of purple. We'll just get this kind of worked in here, and we want to have some of the wall way off in the distance, kind of create that illusion of depth to the painting. I'm coming back here with my fan brush, and just mixed a little bit of a green pile of paint here. My green, I'm using some sap green, a little bit of yellow. Just wanted to kind of create kind of a nice hill effect here with some shrubbery. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get this painted in here, and then I can come back with my airbrush and just lighten it up a little bit, change the value, soften everything a little bit more. So I don't need to go incredibly light right now, since I'll be introducing that airbrush, and that'll really help to change the value to what I really kind of need it to be. For now, it's just a matter of kind of laying this in. Got a little bit of some rock formations here in the back as well, and you just want to kind of bounce around here. You want to make sure that you're really paying attention to your negative space, and you want a lot of that background to show through between that canopy of shrubbery. So you don't need a whole lot of detail here. It's really just a matter of just getting this really laid in here, and I've come back and I've added my first layer of airbrushing, and that's kind of softened that up a little bit, create a little bit of atmosphere. And now I can come back in here and kind of add the next level here. And gonna go just a shade darker now, as I'm adding in this next section of the wall. And right now I'm just kind of playing with some colors and using a lot of Indian yellow right now into this with a kind of a purple gray mixture here. And trying to make sure that my value is right. I've never visited the Great Wall. I've actually been to China 3 or 4 times. Used to travel out there for work, and unfortunately I never had a chance to actually make it to the wall, but it's a pretty amazing structure, and definitely a very interesting subject for me, that I thought would be really fun to try to paint. Alright, so just bringing in some more dark here for the next layer of this mountain here. It's a little bit closer, and so for this I've actually mixed together sap green and ultramarine, or actually, I'm sorry, sap green and dioxazine purple are my 2 primary colors here that I've mixed together. And then I'm going back over that again with a little more sap green. I'm just trying to lighten this up, create a little bit of movement. Not too concerned about my brush strokes right now. Just kind of lay this in real quick. You want to kind of go, you don't want to go too dark here. I'm going to be coming back and adding in some texture here shortly, where I'll just sort of stipple on some dark texture. That way it'll kind of start to give the impression of some shrubbery. We're going to have a cliff here, or just a large boulder that some of these rocks are kind of sticking up. And we'll kind of just play with the colors as we go here. Now that we're going to start laying in this next segment of the wall, and really right now I just want to kind of figure out where everything's going to be, and where my lights and my shadows are going to be. Obviously we're going to have our light source coming from the right. Got to keep that in mind. So the shadow color I'm using here is once again that blue-gray mixture that we've discussed, mixed in a little bit of Indian yellow into that as well, and then the light side is mostly Indian yellow and some titanium white. And then just kind of coming back in and kind of graying that out just a little bit. We don't need to go too light right now. We can introduce a lot of that here later. The idea is going to be just to have kind of a burst of light that is kind of peeking through some of the clouds. And part of this wall is going to be in shadow. And then we'll have one section here at the forefront that's going to be just a really bright band of light. Just adding in some simple bricks here. It's still distant enough. We don't need to put too much incredible amount of detail to that. And we'll obviously have a lot more detail here on the forefront of the painting. So and now I've kind of just switched to a really small fine brush. This, again, is a round number 0 brush. And this is a natural hairbrush too, by the way. So, but I can get a lot of good detail here with this brush. You just got to kind of slow down now and really take some time. If there's one thing about painting, it's definitely having patience. Oftentimes, these paintings won't look like much in the beginning, and you just have to just be patient with it as you go through the process. Start to bring in that detail, start to layer more paint on. So now I'm coming back with that stippling. I've got an old brush here. It's an old round brush that has a lot of wear and tear to it, and I like to keep old brushes because sometimes you can get some really interesting effects with them when the heads on these brushes begin to kind of warp a little bit. So this one I've really just fanned out, and I've just mixed a pile of purple and umber together, and kind of created this dark greenish purple color that I'll just come right through here and I'll just dot on this color. I'm just trying to start to kind of create some basic shape into the foliage here, as I can try to locate a lot of the shadow into the shrubbery. That's kind of the idea. This definitely takes a minute, and it does take a good deal of time. But I really like the technique here quite a bit, and you can really take care of a good bit of the work that's required just by getting this underpainting kind of blocked in appropriately. Kind of come in now and bring in some basic shapes here to our little cliff, and start to kind of identify where our shadows are going to be in some of the crevices, and then I can kind of work around that. Coming back now, I've gone into pure carbon black now to use to stipple on. I just wanted to get that just a shade darker than the stippling that I did there in the shadowed part of this mountain there in the background. So a little bit closer, and needs to be a little bit darker. And again, as I kind of stipple this on, I'm looking at also identifying the pockets of shadow, a little bit of separation in the mountains, and that'll help to really kind of distinguish certain clumps of trees from others. But now it's beginning to really start to take some shape and effect now, and when I go back with my highlights, it'll be that much easier to be able to identify where the individual leafing is going to have to be. So now I'm stippling on a little bit more color. I've kind of gone into my burnt sienna, and just want to kind of start to create a little bit of texture now into the cliff. And then I've darkened that color and more into my purples and numbers, going into the shadowed side and just getting that stippled in as well, and just to kind of create a little bit of interest. Coming back now and using my rigger brush and starting to identify some of the cracks, some of the separation now into the cliff, and then still taking that rigger brush, I can kind of start to come in now and bring in some gold, where I know I'm going to have some highlight here. I've mixed my titanium white, my cad yellow, and cad orange, and now I can just kind of start to kind of figure out where I think that light is going to really be kind of striking the side of this cliff. This is going to be the part of the painting here on the forefront where we're going to have that band of light that's breaking through the clouds. And it's kind of gone a little shade lighter on my gold here. Wanted to get it just a little bit brighter. I'm just kind of coming through here now and just really adding a little bit of character to this, a little bit more detail, and we're going to have some shrubbery kind of growing between those cracks as well, and just kind of introduce a little bit more interest to the painting. So get all that kind of laid in here now, and I've gone ahead and kind of drawn in a little bit more detail now to the wall here in the forefront. There's a lot of it's just a lot of interesting architecture, quite an amazing structure, and definitely one of those man-made wonders of the world. But a lot of detail now, and I want to take a little bit more time, figure out where everything is, and start to kind of block in my colors now. And once again, we're kind of using those same gray tones, the blue grays, moving into the golds. This is where we're going to have a lot of sunlight striking the wall now. And as I begin to kind of lay this in, it's probably important just to mention what I will do is when I switch to my oil palette, I'm going to create a series of glazes, and I'm going to be kind of adjusting some of my colors somewhat, mostly kind of creating some darker glazes that I'll be laying on top of this, and that will help me to kind of get the right colors that I'm really wanting to get, add a little bit more richness to the painting as well. So right now this is just a matter of kind of getting a close proximity to what I kind of want with my acrylic paints here, and then we can just adjust later with the oil palette. Right now we're going to have a lot of contrast to the painting, which contrast is always really important. You always kind of want to think about, obviously, your composition, but your value systems, your contrast between lights and darks, and all these things, all these considerations, the colors you're using, how you're using your color wheel to complement with your colors. Are all considerations that I'm always thinking about. I'm always thinking about a lot of things as I kind of begin to paint this in. Start to add just a little bit more detail now. I'm starting to bring in a little bit of the bricks that were used to construct this. And since we're getting a little closer, it's going to be just a little bit more identifiable. The colors are going to start to get a little bit warmer now and bolder as I'm moving to the forefront of the painting here. They just have a bunch of interesting stairs, stairways that are all kind of lining the lining this wall, and so just trying to kind of figure this out and kind of lay this in. I am using a reference photo of the Great Wall, and I used a couple different ones actually. I was trying to really kind of figure out the anatomy of this wall, and since I've never actually visited it before, but there's a lot of good reference materials that can be found, and then I can just kind of create my own little interpretation of that. So I'll continue to kind of block this in. Again, the detail will come a little bit later as I really start to work this, but now just kind of laying this in, get some basic detail going here, and once I've got that kind of figured out, then I can start to really begin to work all the trees that are on this mountain. Of course, I've got to keep flipping my board on its side here, where I can try to get in there and get the right angles that I'm looking for. I never like to really lock my canvases or my boards into onto my easel, so I can just have the freedom of the movement and of that. You see me here using my acrylic paint pen, which I've discussed in past videos, but this is an acrylic paint that comes in kind of a pen format, and I like to use those because it definitely gives you some really nice sharp lines. Alright, so now I've switched to my oil palette, and you can refer to the video that I posted right before this video that I really kind of discuss bringing in these individual leaves, and I believe I called that video how to paint in leaves on the side of a mountain. and I kind of slow this down and actually kind of just discuss that on the video. But just wanted to kind of use just the corner of this brush. I'm using a flat synthetic brush here, and I'm really laying this in thick now because we've switched to the oil palette, and this will definitely be a little thicker, take a little more time because we have to just try to bring in each individual leaf, but this gives me a little more control, and I can really kind of dictate how I'm kind of laying in these clumps of trees and these little canopies here, because you're going to have a good deal of separation, but you really want to allow a lot of that underpainting to show through. Up to this point, you've worked really hard on that underpainting, and you've really done most of the work just in the beginning to get this illusion. But by identifying kind of the shadows and some of the separation early on with your underpainting, this process will go a lot smoother. But I want to look at your negative space and allow a lot of that to show through there. So the colors I've kind of mixed here, I've got phthalo green, which has phthalo has a lot of blue in it. So I've mixed a phthalo green with a little titanium white and a little bit of sap green, and created the kind of the shadow leafing, I suppose. And then on top of that, I've started to kind of introduce a little bit of Winsor lemon to that mixture, and can start to kind of highlight where I think the sun's going to be striking. And I'll continue to kind of build on top of that and use those colors, but really introduce a lot more yellows and whites to the greens. That way it really starts to brighten up. Now this is the part of the painting now where we're going to have a nice band of bright sunlight that will be striking up the side of this mountain here, and so by continuing to lighten up my mixture here with more yellow and white, and still using a fair amount of the phthalo green, but now it's just a matter of kind of coming through here and playing with the colors, playing with the highlights and the shadows, and really trying to create some really nice some really nice kind of complement to the painting, and you'll really want to be pretty patient with this. This really will take a while. I have to go back quite often and reload the paint. I talk about in the previous video, talk about how I do load the brush. It's you've kind of got to push into the paint on your palette and create kind of ridges of paint, because you want this to be thick, and it really does kind of pop out fairly prominently on the board, because obviously with acrylic you don't get quite the texture that you do with oil paint. Now I'm using my Alkyd oils, which I've also discussed before too, but Alkyds are fairly fast drying oils, and they're workable for several hours, but after in my opinion, after about 7 or 8 hours, they're fairly dry to the touch, and that's really nice because you can go back and keep kind of reworking and layering on top of this without having to wait for several days or weeks at a time. And so I've kind of grown to love these Alkyd oil paints. Alright, so now we're kind of working on that darker shadowed side of our mountain here. And trying to do here is kind of create this illusion that we probably have some sort of a cloud that we can't see, that's sort of covering some of that sunlight a little bit. And so this is going to be kind of more shadowed and darker, and so we're going to keep it more into those cool green blue tones, using that phthalo green. So I'm just really kind of skipping around here. I'm jumping around, and I'm thinking about how these trees are going to sort of look, and how I'm going to, how I would think that they would sort of grow together a little bit. Once again, not killing that underpainting. It's really important. It's very easily done, and so let that underpainting kind of be your friend, and it will really work well for you as you do this. And this is definitely probably one of the most time-consuming parts of the entire painting, is just laying in all this shrubbery. So it will take some time, and often for me I need to step away and kind of reset, and then come back a little bit later and pick it back up again. But since I'm working on such a small board, it's not too much of a chore. But definitely this can be quite the chore if you're working on a large format canvas or board. So that was partly why I wanted to go to this size of a MDF board, because I knew I was going to have a lot of leafing that needed to be done, and I didn't want to have to do this on a real large surface. This is really kind of the first layer. What I'm going to do is, once I get this laid in, I'm going to pay particular attention to the forefront of the painting, where I have that band of sunlight, and creating these real bright leaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to use just a little phthalo green, and then just bring in that Winsor lemon in between those two colors, and then with some titanium white, but more of the lemon and more of the white, and probably 1/3 of the quantity of phthalo green is kind of how I would mix my brightest highlights. And so I'll be going back and doing that. What I'll do is I'm going to let this dry for one day. And I've let this dry for one day now, and now I'm coming back the next day, and now this is dry to the touch, and I'm adding that next layer of brightness using those colors I described. And now I really want to come in here and start to highlight these bright sections here into the mountain. And this is really going to help to really draw the eye and really distinguish some of the lights here, and really add another level of contrast, which is what I really wanted to do. This is certainly going to be the focal point of the painting. It's going to draw the eye and help to distinguish those lights and shadows. But this is much easier done once this is dried, and so can really come in here now and add some realism to this, to all this shrubbery. So I get this laid in, and then I'm going to start to introduce those glazes that I described, and I'm just using I'm just using a simple medium to help me with my glazes here, keeping them really transparent when I do this, and letting a lot of the underpainting show through. And that's really the key with glazes, is you want to have them very, very transparent, and that way you just would mix just a small quantity of color into it, and it'll be transparent enough that underpainting will show through. But that way I can come back and really kind of adjust my colors, and again, that'll add another level of richness to the painting. Alright, so I'm coming back now, just adding a little bit more gold mixture here. I want to get these little sections here on the wall just a little bit brighter, and kind of get that into on those steps as well. But you know, this is going to be where we're going to have the most sunlight. This is my first layer of glaze, and I've just mixed purple and burnt umber in very, very minute quantities, but mostly medium here. And as you can see, it's still retaining that underpainting, but it's going back and kind of darkening things. And I just wanted to get a little bit more dark shadowing here, and specifically in the back part of this wall, it's going to be darker. And I'm going to come back here and kind of play with some of the colors. I'm actually going to lay in this glaze, then I'll come with another glaze with just a little bit of blue, and that'll kind of cool things out as I come back with the blue. I'm mostly just kind of working my shadows here. So this is where I come back with just pure blue on top of that last glaze, and that just kind of brings that extra level of coolness that I'm looking for. So we're getting close to the end of the painting here, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully this was something that was helpful for you, and I would please admonish you to please subscribe to my channel, and you can catch my other painting tutorials as well. We'll meet back here again next time for another painting. I've got a couple commissions that I've got to accomplish, so I'm kind of thinking about how I want to incorporate those commissions into some tutorial videos, and some instructional lessons. So I look forward to doing that. But I thank you so much for tuning in, and I appreciate all your comments. And I'm going to add some of the final layers of detail here to the painting. But thanks so much. I hope you've enjoyed this. Have a wonderful day.